going to do today, partly because of, it seems that quite a few students are interested in it, but not only, that's not the only reason. It's a good enough reason, but that's not the only reason. What we're going to do today, we're going to look at the analytical or theoretical framework in psychology. And when I said that we will look a bit more in details at how the analysis of the relationship between X and Y, whichever one they are, how do we approach this analysis, what are the strategies, what are the skills, what are the cognitive tools that we can use to do that, and the theoretical ones, not about how we write and do we write nicely or not, the theoretical ones, the ones which are based on principles. We will do that, but I want to do it with regard to the psychological framework, the theoretical framework. Now, if we look at it, let's start. Now, please, I want you to think about, when I will review everything, I want you to think about, and by all means interrupt me, stop me, ask me, I want you to think about the concepts, the things that you are interested in. Those who do management, I know some of you thinking again about dissertation, essays, project, etc. Or just interested in whatever concept it is that you're interested in. So what I want you to think about is how does that apply to the concept that I'm interested in? Because I'm doing psychology, but it's not psychology in the context that it applies to everything else. And that's what therefore I'm using it in order to us to practice it. So, first of all, we said psychology, the study of the human being. So what's the dependent variable? If I'm a psychologist, and I'm doing A-level, first degree, master, PhD, teaching, what's the dependent variable? The study of the human being. What's the dependent variable? Human being. Okay? So in this big world of all the circles, all the concepts that we said, the biggest category, analytical category, is the human being. If I'm doing sociology, what would be the dependent variable? The human being? What's sociology? The study of? Society, the group. Yeah. So the dependent variable is going to be the group. Forget about the explanation now, about the theories. We're talking about what is it that we're interested in explaining. So everyone that studies psychology is going to ask something, whichever concept it is, it has to do with the human being. The unit of analysis is the human being. Now don't think that it works only in the social sciences. If we do philosophy, what's the dependent variable? What's the dependent?
Existence.
It's a study. So what? Sorry.
Existence of humanity.
I couldn't hear.
Oh, never mind.
No, what is it in philosophy? What we're interested in philosophy? Ideas. So the study of what's the dependent variable? Ideas. And the ideas are the ones which are not part of what we're talking about here. I will get into that later. Political science. What's the dependent variable?
Politicians, politics.
Politicians and politics. Good. First of all, it's politician. If you look at it like that, that's really nice. That's really cool. Politicians. A politician is what? An animal? An idea?
Human.
Human being. Perfect. Now you see where political psychology comes into play. And if it is not politicians, you said politics. What is it in politics?
Society.
Society, but in which aspect? What part of society? It's like sociology, decision making, politics, political human being. I'll get into what the human being is. Political human being. So one thing absolutely playing on. Politicians, which is when you investigate, and again started especially after the Second World War, with fascism and Nazism, etc., to look into how does that happen. You will see that actually, I said it a little bit yesterday, but all these disciplines developed as disciplines as such after the Second World War. It was such a shock to society, to the human mind, that people ask themselves, why? What is why? The independent variables, right? Why what? The dependent variable, politicians that are like Hitler, Stalin, human beings that behave like in that way, ideas that are this and that, etc., etc. So all this, not so much in Europe, but more like that in the USA, which is why you have a lot of interdisciplinary in America compared with Europe in England. So back to that. So again, what we see, that even philosophy, that we are not doing empirical research, we're not collecting data, we are just arguing something. Even literature. If you watch a movie, if you have an argument, if you read a book, more or less, these are the unit in which you look at everything. You have a character, they're doing something, or you have a group in the movie, they're doing something. Now, the students here, management, business, etc., etc., what are your dependent variables? It's not going to be depression, we agreed about, well, it can be, but depression of who? The businessman with the students. Exactly. They are depressed, they don't have enough money. It's not going to be anxiety. It's going to be the anxiety of what? The boss or the employee. So what I want you to start, what we're going to do today, I'm going to review that. Because that's the cognitive trick that I really want, or I hope, that will be really established in your brain, in your attitude, in your perspective. That the dependent variable is the one that always changes. But where is all, and people think that if I'm interested in depression, I'm doing a lot of work about depression, and I'm doing a lot of work about the business, and how to make your intellectual analysis, your effort, your creativity is not here, it's here. Now what's beautiful about all this, that if you take into account, for example, psychology, 1, 6, that's the end of it. 6 core key theories, perspectives, etc. Each one of them has millions. We said, otherwise the university would have been closed and none of them would have been sitting here. Each one of them had endless theories, model, and still, hopefully, you are here, you're going to develop ones. But 6, to be honest, there's no more than that. Now, when you start thinking about the topics that you're interested in, think about all the time, again, you're changing something here. But what are your origins? What are the explanatory origins of this dependent variable, whichever one it is? Even when we said like about billions, and I'm telling you, please watch this, you have to watch it. Even at billions, businessmen, business conversation. When I pull a deal off the table, I leave Nagasaki behind. Why? Why do you leave Nagasaki behind? You pull a deal off the table. What does that have to do with the destruction that you want to leave behind? Now, the deal, the business, is what? The dependent or independent? It's dependent variable. Something is happening with the deal in this business interaction. And then something is happening here. That's where the story lies. Which is what I was saying the last 2-3 minutes. The story lies in the roots. Now, if you do, well, everything you do in management, and that's what I want you to start thinking about today. Think about the things that you're interested in, and I want you to start thinking about them in the within the perspective or within the framework of this. I will review that, but that doesn't mean, and we will get to that, that those are directly related to this dependent variable that you have chosen. Because if you remember, I said the X and Y, this is just, it's like a Lego. Yeah? This is your basic unit. From here, the matrix is opening up. And the matrix is your intellectual process. This is where your ideas come. Because you know a priori, if it was that X explains Y in 100% of the cases, there is no matrix, there's no analysis, there's no evaluation. All we have is X explains Y, end of. Close universities. Okay? The only reason why we are still doing all this, why about each one of these, and no matter what you put here, we are writing dissertation, essays, books, sitting in classes, publishing, etc., is because something here is not waterproof. And the thing that is not exactly explained, this little bit, even if it is a crumb, 1%, that is not explained here in this basic unit of X and Y, that's where the mystery is. That's where it is intriguing, that's where it's exciting, that's where your originality and so have to come into play. Now, the first thing about the human being is that now we start breaking it analytically. Yes?
I'm sorry,
Yes.
you just said if it's 100% waterproof or sealed, you're not interested in it, it's just the one statement. Why don't we focus on why X explains Y? Even if X explains Y to 100%, the question of why X explains Y can be a lot more interesting, right?
Ah. Well, that depends at which level you're examining it. I mean, if you know that smoking always causing heart attack, 100% of the cases, then are you saying that it's possible that heart attacks can be the result of something else as well?
No, I'm saying why, then we should focus on why does smoking cause heart attacks?
Oh yeah, of course. But there's a limit to it. There's a limit to it. You know that you're still staying within the X and Y. Of course, that's what the explanation is. The why, that's what you're interested in, of course, which is why you write about it and analyze it. But at the end of the day, your analysis hasn't got much more space to go because it's limited